Thanks so much for being here this weekend. Happy Easter. Glad that we can spend it together. I realize there's a lot of ways you could spend this morning, and so especially if you're a guest with us, thanks for coming. And I'd love to meet you. My name's Ryan, one of the pastors on staff here, and excited to walk us into a new series we're kicking off today called Come and See, and going to really just be spending a lot of time looking at the person of Jesus and kind of understanding and his heart and getting to know kind of who he is over the next bunch of weeks. And that's going to be the focus of this new series that we're in. And excited about that. Invite you to come back. If you don't have a church home, maybe consider checking that out and being a part of it here with us for the next month or so. And I think that will be a great time just to kind of get to know Jesus personally, right from the scripture, and hear some of his story. And today what we're going to do, of course, on Easter is we're going to look at hope. And the story of hope. And right, if you're maybe you're like me, you didn't grow up in the church. Maybe you're not as familiar with the story of Easter and kind of how this all plays out. Right, the big hope of Easter is kind of this in a nutshell. It's that Jesus is God with skin on. He came to the planet. He lived a perfect life, something that we could never do. And he, in doing that, in offering his life, because he lived perfectly, never sinned, he then could offer himself as a sacrifice for us, for our sin. And when he did that, when he offered himself on the cross, he then was buried and then rose from the dead. And when he rose from the dead, he beat death, right? And that message, the fact that he rose from the dead, he beat death, now he can offer forgiveness to anybody who puts their faith in him. And that is the great hope of Easter, right? It's kind of the message that we have locked into. And again, if you're like me, maybe you didn't grow up hearing that message. Maybe that's a newer one for you, and you're still kind of trying to get your head around it. A bunch of us did grow up around Easter, kind of used to the customs and the norms of church life, or maybe it's been a little bit for you, but you remember it when you were a kid, and you know that this day is all about hope. Right? It's all about hope, that Easter and hope are connected together. I was thinking about this a ton this week and kind of how hope works. And here's what I was thinking. The reality is the problem with hope is this. It's not necessarily what we're putting our hope in. We'll talk a lot about that. The problem is our experience with hope. Right? The problem is our experience with hope. Here's what I mean. As we live life, this inevitably happens. That along the way, what happens to us is we live life is we're going to hear some amazing news. Some amazing news. And you name it, right? It's somebody tells us a promise. Somebody offers us something. And what's inevitably going to happen is we hear that amazing news is we come alongside and then we match that amazing news with big belief. Big belief. We go all in on it, right? We hear it and we're like, ooh, yes, I'm going in on that news. And I'm putting my faith in it. And this starts early. Sometimes this shows up right with family, and people tell us things. We believe them. We go all in on it. Maybe it's a coach, maybe it's an offering that we interact with, and we say, yes, I believe that. And then inevitably what's going to happen is I hear amazing news and I match it with big belief, is somewhere along the way, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where even though I went big in my belief, what I find is that amazing news is not so amazing, and I end up with crushed hope, right? I end up with crushed hope. And you have experienced this, I'm almost positive. I know I have experienced this. And as we go through this cycle over and over again, what happens is we start to get more and more skeptical of believing amazing news when it shows up. And we're not always sure if we can match it with big belief. Because when amazing news happened before, and I put my faith in it, I put my big belief in it, man, last time I experienced that, I was crushed, right? And we can probably all think of examples of how that played out, right? Our experiences with hope. I've got 4 kids, and we homeschooled our kids all when they were young. And I remember we went on this trip that we were really excited about to D.C. And we were going to go explore, and this kind of a homeschool family thing, you know, you're like, we have the freedom to go explore and go do the DC trip and see all the things. It's going to be awesome. The problem with traveling with 4 kids is like when you go to stay in a hotel, they're like, we really want you to stay in 2 rooms and it's expensive. I was kind of complaining to a friend about this. I'm like, I don't know how we're going to do this. And he was like, hey, there's this thing now where you can go and you can rent somebody's like house. This is when Airbnb was just starting to come out. And they're like, it's kind of the same price as like in a hotel room. And I was like, this is amazing news, right? I can go stay in a whole place, like a whole home for the price of a hotel. I'm so pumped. I'm so excited about this, right? So I start researching it. We talk about it. We're going to do it. And we start looking into it. And I'm like, man, I'm fired up about this. This is going to be amazing. And I kind of pick it all, lock it all in. I have no idea what I'm doing, right? It's my first interaction with it. And I remember we pull in, we get a little bit closer to DC and to the spot we're going to. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of police activity. Like right around where it seems like we've seen a few people get arrested just in the last few blocks here as we get closer to our destination. I was like, this feels a little bit disturbing. And then right, we pull in and I'm like, this is definitely an unsafe situation. And I'm like, kids, you stay in the car. I'll go investigate, right? And I go in and there's like 3. It's row housing, right? Which is fine. And then there's like 3 gates to get down into this like cellar that we're gonna go stay in, right? And we're gonna go stay in this flat. The pictures were amazing, right? The pictures were phenomenal. We were like, this is gonna be awesome. We walked down into the cellar, and I'm like, honey. Right, calling on a cell phone. Honey, you stay with the kids. I'll come get one at a time, right? We'll take them into the home, lock the doors in between, right? It's gonna be scary. And so we get inside. It's like super gross, and I'm like, and the kids are like, Dad, I thought you said this place was gonna be nice, and I'm like, right? I open a cupboard, and this like little swarm of fruit flies pops out. And I was like, I'm sure those will go away, right? This is probably gonna get better. And I'm flipping out at this point because we're here for a week, right? This isn't just like hold your breath and make it through. And by the way, my Airbnb experiences since then have gotten better. I learned how to like use it. But this is the experiences. I'm like, oh, it's going to be amazing, amazing news. I can find this whole flat. It's going to be a great price. We can be with our family. I go all in, right? And then my poor little hopes are crushed, right? It's sad. And then, but guys, we've all done this, right? We're playing with it, but in a very real way. This is what has happened: is somebody made a promise to you, I'll stay with you, I'll be with you. I believed it, then they left me. If you go and you do what culture tells you to do, everything's going to work out. You get good grades and you follow through and you get in the right social circles. You're good at sport. You do the things that the world will kind of tell you to do, and you go all in. And it's what's going to equal over here is this beautiful situation. And over and over and over again, that's not quite what happens. It's not quite what happens, right? If we're just being really honest, which I value that situation, because we come into Easter and we could just kind of say, hey, let's just like be excited about it. But what if we just got really honest about it and said, wait a minute, I come into a situation where I want to hope, I think I want to believe, but my experience with hope has not been so great. If I'm honest, most of the times that I went in big, my heart was broken, my hope was crushed on the other side. I think if we got really honest and we could share stories, probably most of us have had a situation like that. So when we hear, man, amazing news, we're a little bit skeptical, right? We're going to hold back a little bit. We're going to look for the fine print a little bit. Really? You're going to give me a free car? What's the catch? Really? I can, right? We're going to dial back and look at it a little bit closer and say, before I go match my big belief to that amazing news, I'm going to take a little bit longer and make sure. And sometimes we get to the point where we're not even sure we want to hear any good news. We're not even sure that our big belief is even up for grabs anymore. and we kind of hunker down and live in a place where I just don't want to have my hope crushed because it leaves me in a place that I'm kind of worse off than when I started. And the Bible talks about this quite a bit. Here's a few verses that show up in the book of Proverbs, Proverbs 13:12. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. Man, it nails it, right? Hope deferred. When I have hope and then it's crushed, it's put off, it's horrible. It's a horrible experience. But if it could play out that I had amazing news and I believed it and that it actually led to a longing fulfilled, it would be amazing. Right? It'd be amazing. Right? What if it was true? What if I could find something that I really believe in it and it actually did what it said it was going to do? What if somebody I could believe in and I could put my faith in, they actually could deliver what they're offering? Somebody's trustworthy. And in a world that we live in where it feels like organizations and people are constantly telling us things and then failing to deliver on those things, it gets hard for us to anchor into that. The Bible says this in Proverbs 18:14, the human spirit can endure in sickness, but a crushed spirit who can bear? Man, I can handle my body getting beat up. That's hard, right? It's certainly hard. Sometimes there's hope that is wrapped up in that, but to have a crushed spirit, man, I don't know if I can do it again. Right? If we're just super honest, sometimes we walk into situations where we hear amazing news and we're say, I just don't know if I can't be let down again. I can't go in big on that because if my heart were to be broken again, I don't know if I'd get back up. But what I want us to see today as we go into Easter is we're not the first people to go through this. Right? We're not the only ones. And the group of people that followed Jesus a long time ago, they went through something very similar. Right? The disciples, the Bible would call them the disciples or apostles in different parts of the Bible, a group of men that Jesus chose and invited to follow him. They would have left all kinds of stuff. They left jobs. They left security. They left relationships. They left 3 years of their lives on the table and on pause in many ways to go anchor themselves into this teacher who might be the real deal. Right? And as they started to follow this guy, he had amazing news. He said, hey, man, the kingdom is here. Right? He claimed to be the Messiah. Amazing news. If he's the guy, it's going to be fantastic. We're going to land in the place that we want to land. And so they went big. They believed. They left all kinds of stuff. And their big belief would be strengthened over time as they watched Jesus do all kinds of stuff that nobody can do. And they saw his heart on display. Right? They watched him perform miracles. And they watched him interact with the sick. They watched him interact with those who've been marginalized and rejected. And they're like, this is the guy. I think this is the guy. Right? And they kind of progressively put that together more and more and said, I think we can follow him. And then you come to the last week of Jesus' life, and Jesus tried to warn them. He said, hey guys, listen, you need to understand, I'm going to be arrested and I'm going to be killed. And it kind of never registered for the disciples. But as he was arrested, as he was taken and as he was beaten, and the things started to unravel with the unraveling of Jesus' life and the destruction of Jesus' life also would be the destruction of the disciples' hope. Their dreams, their hopes were pinned to that person. And as he was crucified, right, I'm sure that the whole time this was playing out, they were wondering, when's he going to end this thing? Okay, there's got to be some cool lesson Jesus is going to teach us. He would do this stuff all the time. And it just kept going. And he's really dead. and he's buried. And now they're in that space. You guys know this space. They're in that space. You know the space right after your dreams are crushed? Where you're like, what do I do now? What do I do now? Where do we go now? Like, I don't know what to do with myself. How do I get up? Where do I aim? So they were terrified. Jesus was killed. And that if he could be killed, certainly we could be killed. And so they were hiding and they were afraid and they locked themselves in a room. And I don't know what else they were going to do if Jesus didn't interact with them. But here's where the story picks up, and John tells us what plays out. It says, on the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and he stood among them, and he said, peace be with you. This is fantastic. So evidently, Jesus just supernaturally appears in the room. And he's like, hey, peace, everybody. Right? You can imagine that would be terrifying. So after he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. So now, all of this disillusionment, all this crushed hope, Jesus comes and he enters into it with the disciples. And he meets them in it. And he shows them himself and helps them to believe. Now, what's interesting is not all the disciples were there in this interaction. And so we're told here a little bit later, it says, now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, we have seen the Lord. Right? So these are a bunch of his friends that he has lived life with. He's been with them for a long time. And they come to him and they say, hey, Thomas, listen, man, I know you're heartbroken. Jesus is alive. Listen, he is alive. He got up from the dead, right? He's got 10 people that he trusts and live life with testifying, telling him that this is the real deal. And listen to what he says. He said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my fingers where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. I'm done. I'm done with, in essence, I'm done with Jesus. I'm done with this. He is deep into this. He is deep into that moment of saying, I cannot risk my hope getting crushed again. I'm not going back through the cycle. I can't do it. I can't do it. A bunch of us have been there where Thomas is right here, right in that moment. I will not believe. I'm out. I've been hurt by life. I've been lied to. Church people hurt me and failed me. I've believed the promise and bought it hook, line, and sinker enough. I'm done. I will not believe. And through the deep and disheartening breakdowns and disappointments of crushed dreams and crushed hopes, right where Thomas is, this is fascinating because right, our minds would say, well, what does he do with that? How does he interact with a Thomas that's done? He could have looked at Thomas and said, hey, man, I warned you about this. I told you I was going to die. Weren't you paying attention, Thomas? Weren't you taking notes? He could have gone that route, right? He could have looked and said, Thomas, you got a bunch of friends here, man. They're all telling you. Don't you have enough faith? Could have rebuked him, could have scolded him, could have been harsh with him. I need you to see this. I need you to see the heart of Jesus. I need you to come and see, right? Because I need to know when I feel like I can't get up, I want to know, how does Jesus look at me? When it feels like it's all done, I'm out of gas. I just can't go anymore. And guys, we all get there. Thomas, his story is captured in the Bible. But you and I hit these moments in the same way. I don't know if I can believe it. Watch what Jesus does. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. The doors were locked. Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Same thing. Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach your hand, put it in my side." Says Thomas, "Stop doubting. Believe. Believe." He went into the crushed hope. Jesus entered into that broken heart that Thomas had. And he met him right where he was. It didn't say, "Come up here to me. Meet the standard, Thomas. Perform, Thomas. Suck it up, Thomas." He goes all the way down to the guy who's at the bottom. His heart is broken. He says, look, the news is real. The news is real. It's me. I'm the one saying it. Look, you can trust me, Thomas. Look at my hands. It's real. You can take your big belief, you can match it to that amazing news. I want you to see there is a reliable and a real hope that you can anchor and build your life on. And right here, after Jesus interacts personally with Thomas, Thomas has a decision to make. He's got a decision to make. I'm done. He could have said, "Jesus, I'm done with you. I'm out. I can't do it again. I can't risk it again." He could walk away. He could do all kinds of things. Because he's back at the beginning of the loop again. And even though Jesus met him in the thick of it and invites him to walk back through, he could opt out and say, I just can't do this. Here's Thomas's answer, and it's profound. Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." My Lord and my God. I'm in. I'm in. You rose from the dead, I'm in. You met me in the middle of my pain and my breakdown and my crushed hope. I follow you, my Lord, my God. Thomas isn't, here's the thing. Thomas isn't being religious here. He's not just celebrating a sweet holiday. This is his life, man. This is the epitome of all of his hopes and dreams. All the eggs are going to go into this basket if he says yes to this. And he looks and he says, "I'm in. My Lord, my God. I'm following him." He got up from the dead. He matches this amazing news with huge belief. Right? From the bottom of the pit, right, to the mountaintop. He risks it all again, all for the possibility of there being a real and reliable hope, that this could play out. Jesus interacted with Thomas in a unique way, right? He came to him personally. Jesus said something I think was for our benefit. Next, he told him, "Because you've seen me, Thomas, you've believed. Because I came to you and I showed you." Listen to what he says. He says something about us. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. That's us. He said, blessed are the people who later, who years from now, decades from now, and centuries from now are hurting Thomas like you're hurting, whose hearts are broken like yours are broken. And when they hear the amazing news that I got up from the dead, they come and they match it with big belief. They anchor into a hope that is real. They go to church and listen to airplanes. Right? They walk it all the way through. This is, congratulations, blessed is that person. You say, Ryan, what do we do with all this? Guys, here's the thing about Easter. We can do the whole thing. We can wear some sweet pastel colors and make some eggs. It's awesome. You can make some sweet pictures, and I love it. It's great. You can even do some bunny stuff if you want. I like it. Cool. You can even say he's risen, and we'll say risen indeed. It's a thing. I didn't grow up doing that. That's cool, though. Right? It's because I was a pagan growing up, right? But at the end of the day, if this amazing news doesn't actually get into my real life and my real heartbreak, then I'm not really sure what we're doing. Because this is what it was meant for, and this is what it was for Thomas, is the real worries and the real fears and the real crushed dreams of real life. That's where the resurrection meets me. That's where Easter comes to me. It's where Jesus comes to me and says, listen, I love you. I love you. I know you know the information. I know you're super scared. But remember, this is really good news. You can trust me. You can put all your eggs here. I'm not going to fail you like everybody else did. This is why it's a game changer. It's not just a sweet holiday that's exciting because spring's here. It's everything for Thomas, 2,000 years later for us. I'm born and I'm built to put my big belief behind some amazing news. It's how we're wired. We're a people wired to hope. The question is, am I doing this? From a place of brokenheartedness, where am I today? Here's a few places you might be. You might be a follower of Jesus today, and you might say, man, I'm in on this. I'm pro-resurrection. I believe Jesus rose from the dead. Awesome. I would look at you and say, is that resurrection power and message that Jesus can change you and that he's with you, he's for you, that you have a hope that's secure, is that message showing up all the way in the darkest and the deepest parts of your life? Is it just a religion? It's just the thing I do on Sundays sometimes? Or is it real to you? Personal? Sometimes even scary. That's what it means to have a Lord and a God. Some of us, we're hearing all this, and I have a ton of compassion for you. If you're like me and you're hearing this, and it's kind of a lot. It's the first time, and some family member drug you here, and they said, there's this crazy guy with a whiteboard, you got to come. Right? Thanks for coming, seriously. You might be looking at all this and saying, man, this is a lot. I'm skeptical. I'm open, but I'm skeptical. I need a little more information. I need a little room. Thomas needs a little room. That's where you are. You're hearing the amazing news. You're open to it. Before you choose to anchor this arrow in with some big belief, I would invite you to come journey on with us over this next month. Take a look and get to know Jesus. It's a person. He's not a religion. Go with us on it. Go watch The Chosen if you've never seen that. What you're going to get is the heartbeat of Christ. Right? You'll see what he's like a little bit. Grab a book, John. Go read the book of John. And if you need a Bible, we'll give you one. Take one from the seats there. Read the stories about Jesus. Start to investigate. Walk with us. It's okay to take your time. Right? Without apology, I want you to know we want you to land here. Because we believe it, because it's true. But take all the room you need. Guys, and then some of us are here, and you might have grown up in church and been exposed to all the religion. And it just maybe never got personal for you. It never became about you following Jesus yourself. Are you a Christian? Sure. Have you followed Jesus? Have you recognized that he paid for your sin, that he willingly laid down his life to pay for your life, that he's offering you supernatural peace, inexpressible joy, won't make all your problems go away, but he's a person you can trust and follow, and he'll anchor your future forever. You'll never be alone. He's with you. He's for you. And what he's inviting you to do is to say yes. And you have all the information. This is you. You don't need more room. You need to make a decision. Somebody's here, and you may be in the spot where you're like, I actually know what I need to do. And I'm terrified to do it. That's how I felt when I said yes to Jesus. I was in college, and I felt absolutely terrified to take that step. Oh, I knew it was going to change me. I didn't know how. I knew it was going to change me. I heard the news, Jesus can change your life. Jesus can make you different. He can help you. He's worth following. He's trustworthy. And I knew the step I was called to take was this one. Because if you are there, and you've never taken that step, why not today? Why not today? Jesus, here's what it looks like. Jesus, forgive me. I need you. I want to follow you. I believe in you. I believe the news that you're saying is true, and I'm going all in. If you've never made that step, made that decision, do it today. Right? If you're ready, if you're there, and I'll tell you, you can lean in and put all your weight on that hope. All of it. He will be with you every step of the way. And he'll love you, just like he did Thomas, even if your hope is crushed. Is it this news is the news we celebrate? But it only becomes a celebration if I let it get personal, if I go all in, and I lean out on hope. It's the decision we're called to this Easter. So I have the band come out. I'm going to pray for us. We'll sing, worship together. Lord, thank you that you are a God who is full of compassion. kindness. Lord, even though that we have failed you and believed all kinds of stuff that isn't true, done things we're not proud of, and even broken your heart, Lord, you continue to move towards us. You move into our crushed hope, and you invite us to a great faith. Lord, I pray you'd help us with this today. Help us to see the magnitude of what you're offering. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is available to us, that we might be changed and we might be moved, and we might become new from the inside out. Help us with this today, Lord. Increase our faith. Help us to know that your voice is trustworthy. We love you, Jesus. Meet us here, even now.